Testing, testing. Alright, I'm back with the new Destiny 2 video in the wake of the Vow of the Disciple raid. I did not do day 1/day 2 contest mode here, contest mode which has been extended for 24 hours. I was at my friend's house watching the various live streams and not participating so I could live tweet it, which I thought was more fun than, spending 7 hours beating my head against the wall in the first room like some of my friends' teams were doing. And I have no regrets about that. I will hopefully try and do this in normal mode later this week. But I do have thoughts on kind of what I've seen, the raid race, the stuff after the raid, so this may take a couple videos maybe, but we'll just start out here. I did see Salty Grappo's team beat it live. It was a very cool moment. It is always very fun to see a live World's First. This raid race was kind of a disaster on many levels. People were getting error coded for hours and hours and hours in some instances. Some people got through the whole thing totally fine. Some people had literally, 20, 30 restarts. I know Redeem was just getting absolutely murdered in the first section. They could not get past it for 3 hours. I don't know. So I know some people are going to be like, oh, well, this doesn't count, blah, blah, blah. And then, especially in an instance where Dado lost by 3 minutes again, very, very tragic for his part. But it's very weird because the team that won, Elysium, who was also world first for Volt of Glass Reprisal, they had been error coded for the first 2 hours of the raid. So technically they had a much worse start than a lot of other teams. So it doesn't even out in the end, but there's no good way to do this. People were like, oh, they should just stop the raid and start over. And it doesn't matter though at that point because you can't take back, the knowledge of people being in a certain room figuring out a puzzle for an hour. It doesn't matter if you physically start people in different areas. A lot of the raid is just figuring out the mechanics in the first place. So if you've already done that, the cat's out of the bag and there was no going back. So I don't really think there was a good answer here. And the answer is hopefully you just don't see error codes like this in the first place. But yeah, so that wasn't great. In terms of the actual raid itself, it is, as expected, entirely within a pyramid. It is the first multiple race raid to a really major extent. Technically, there's 4 races. You start outside with the Knights, and then you move inside where there's a lot of Scorn, and then there is Taken, and then there is Rolk. And Rolk is none of those things. My biggest fear for the raid was that this was going to be just some giant Scorn boss who is the Disciple. It's not true. Rolk is something else entirely. We're still kind of debating what exactly Rolk is, but from the lore, which you can get a good chunk of after the raid race, you can do a new mission where he has a lot of narration that is inside the pyramid, and there's some lore books. Essentially what I've gathered is he is from a race that was in a different system. The Traveler had visited them once upon a time and left, and then the Darkness kind of recruited him specifically to be a disciple, and his stuff is a little hard to follow, but essentially he is an entirely new race, in another ancient race that the Traveler kind of visited once upon a time. This does seem to me like maybe we are on the way to get another full race of enemies in the future. They talk about specific groups within that race, like stalkers, and they seem like kind of soldier types and things, so this seems like the beginning of something pretty important. I would say Rolk is easily the highlight of the entire raid, just in terms of how that encounter was designed. We have really never seen a kind of fast, mobile boss like that. Usually, the most mobile we see raid bosses are Taniks, floating to one side or the other, whereas a lot of the time it's, Riven was a good raid boss, but Riven was also just one giant thing sitting in one place for the most part. Whereas this, zipping all around, doing these AoE moves, this was a crazy, crazy great boss. Probably one of the most memorable I think I've ever seen. As soon as they came into that room, I was just pretty blown away by it. Everything before this, I was a little so-so on. I think the other previous encounters are a little too samey for my taste. I get the use of the symbols and things, and we're back to they gave all these symbols official Bungie names, so we don't have to speculate, even though people are. I like the Caretaker design. He does seem to have a kind of stupid amount of health for reasons I'm not quite sure on, but I'm sure people will get DPS threats down pretty quickly, especially once we're out of contest mode. I'm sure that won't be a problem at all. According to the lore, I think the Caretaker is one of the first successful infusions of a worm into a scorn, as opposed to a worm going into a hive. I think that's the lore behind the Caretaker, which I find really interesting. And then all the loot and stuff we've seen, the armor is really sick because it moves. There are like moving pieces to it, like the little floating fish scales from LC Bray's little fish thing. They move all over the armor, they move on the guns. A lot of the guns seem really interesting. The origin trait for the raid is as many rounds as you hit, you heal for a certain amount when you reload, which is a really good intrinsic perk. That's like a borderline exotic perk as it is. So that's really interesting. And then what I'm showing here, which you may have guessed by now, is this mission after the raid, where once the raid was beaten, there was a new kind of story mission where they just want you to go and kill a bunch of Scorn. This is kind of an interesting mechanic because it's essentially teaching you the really like bare bones basics of the 2 early raid segments, which is depositing knowledge to move the payload along, which takes, I would argue, entirely too long solo. There's 5 of these sections where you deposit knowledge, which I think takes too long. And then inside, you just have to kill a bunch of Scorn and not die, and then follow some very easy directions, which I was wandering around aimlessly for a while because I didn't understand what to do, but then I figured out I was just being directed to a nearby doorway, and I'm an idiot. So once you figure that out, it's pretty easy, and that's like kind of a light version of the mechanics of that room, but obviously there's no like obelisk in the middle and things like that. This was not hard to do solo. I did die at least once, probably getting sniped, but I don't even remember how. I think I got sniped by crossbow guys or something. The end boss is just 3 kind of giant chieftains that you can just kill with whatever, heavy ammo, anything. And then you will go around the room finding these little terminals that will give you lore. On my first run, I didn't know there were more than 1, so I only got 1, but then I went back and did it. And there are 5 in there. I think the other 5 are in the raid itself, and you will need, I think, people to help you open doors and things, so I don't think you can solo that just in the raid. If you go to the outside world, the pyramid is now lit up in the throne world. Finch has some new stuff to say. Doing that mission now allows you to get your exotic glaive, but only if you have completed the other grind out those other 2 weapon frames requirements, which a lot of people didn't because the RNG in that was so bad, and that is getting buffed in a patch this Thursday. There are 4 new void fragments you can get, which are, I don't have them all memorized, but like one is precision kills and on weakened enemies gives you an orb. One is killing enemies with a grenade. Void grenade gives you volatile rounds on your void weapons, which kind of seems like a worse version of volatile flow. But the fact volatile flow is a seasonal mod, and this is a permanent fragment. So if you want volatile rounds after this, that's how you're going to get it. And then there are a couple other ones that didn't. There's another one about orb. I think if you pick up an orb of light, you get devour, which the orb meta now kind of sucks, but if you spec into that, I can see that pretty good considering how often you can generate orbs if you still put those helmet mods on and things. So we'll see. That could actually be pretty useful. And I believe that's a way for other classes to get devour pretty easily past warlock. So like devour is mainly a warlock thing, but if you can give everything devour, it's pretty good. We have seen the raid exotic revealed. I don't believe it's able to be gotten yet. I'm not sure what the process is going to be to get that. I don't think it was a random drop for anyone. I think there's going to be some sort of quest thing, or maybe it's hard mode. I don't know what the deal is, but it's a pulse rifle where if you hit an enemy that's like under the effect of like suppression or weaken or something, you absorb that effect, and then you can activate your ammo to dish out that effect. And then it's something about how if you hit an enemy or kill an enemy with that effect on, you will automatically reload your magazine. So this seems, it's like a weapon they've specifically built for Void 3.0, which I find very, very interesting. And it's a pulse rifle, and that just got a 10% buff plus another 40% buff to exotic primaries. So that sure seems like a potentially really good option there for something to use in the future when that does start being something that people get widespread. I haven't seen anyone being like super impressed with the glaives yet. But I have not seen enough people using those yet, and I do not have that myself because I did not grind out those crazy red frame steps as I was waiting until they got buffed, because I was very annoyed running the Wellspring like 50 million times and getting exactly nothing. I was very impressed with this raid. The visuals here are stunning. the skyboxes with the forge thing blowing through the worm or whatever it's doing there. It was pretty incredible. The lore implications of Rolk and his people and his planet and his relationship with the Witness and the Darkness is fascinating, and I think we're going to learn a lot more over the course of this year as we approach another conflict. I'm very, very satisfied with this raid boss. I really did not like Tanix. I did not like Soul, whatever his face is, from Garden. I don't think we've had a truly good raid boss since Riven, and Riven had her own problems. So I think this is one of the best raid bosses they've ever done. Maybe I won't say that when I'm actively trying to kill it and getting destroyed, but for now, at least from what I saw, just in terms of kind of evolution of design of raid encounters and things like that, I think they did a really phenomenal job kind of pushing the envelope here. I think it's too early to know kind of how this raid will stack up, compared to other raids in Destiny history. We had so many technical problems the first day, and it's always a little hard to judge contest mode compared to how it'll feel in regular mode, and then there'll be a hard mode, and we've got a lot more runs to go through before I think we can kind of fully judge how this raid compares to others. Does seem to be on the more difficult side. It definitely seems harder than DSC from what I can tell. 7-hour clear was a little longer than I was actually expecting at this point, given how, to be fair, it was all the technical problems, so maybe it would have been more like a 5-hour clear if those hadn't happened, but parts of this were genuinely difficult, and some of the mechanics were pretty hard to figure out. I think once everyone kind of knows the mechanics and things, this will go obviously a lot more smoothly, and maybe even a little less complicated than some previous raids once you kind of know all the symbols, know all the callouts, know the order of operations for things. So I was not expecting anything but a really solid raid from Witch Queen, given how great the rest of it has gone. This really lived up to my expectations, both in terms of not just the encounters, but just kind of pushing things forward with the reveal of Rolk and his story and this new type of enemy. What I'm gathering is that he is a different race of being than the Witness. He is from this other planet, and they are not the same race. But I do believe this opens the door for the possible invasion of a future race in the game, which Destiny has not added. Really, the Scorn and Taken don't even count because those are just kind of modifications of existing races, but the door is really wide open here for not just more disciples, which I think we could get more disciples, in the future here, but also a wider threat of some sort of invasion, because the end cutscene that Ikora says is something about how they're all coming now or something like that. So in addition to the pyramids, we might actually get pyramids with things inside them now. I do not know. Someone asked me if there was a disciple in every pyramid or something, or that's what this meant. I don't think so, because Savathun had this one imprisoned in this pyramid, which was kind of the point. We did not hear from Savathun at all here, so there wasn't some big Savathun resurrection at the end of this. So technically, Rolk and Savathun are still dead, but I maintain Savathun will be brought back to life at some point because her ghost is still out there, and we are going to need her help in fighting the darkness. That much has been very clear. So all in all, really, really rough technical launch for the raid day. I do feel bad for Bungie. I feel bad for the teams who are getting error-coded forever, but these things happen, unfortunately, and I don't see a huge point in getting super, super mad about it, or, decrying that so-and-so didn't have a valid World's First when they were one of the teams who were error-coded for so long. It's kind of a mess, and I don't know if we will ever really know who may have gotten first, if none of this happened, but I don't know how long we can kind of live in the past there for that. In terms of everything else going on, we are going to still be having weekly stuff happen Reset for at least the next few weeks. I think there's at least 2 more weeks in the actual story stuff here with the Keitel Risen storyline, and that seems to be the end of the major parts of that. I do not know if any kind of post-raid developments will occur at Reset compared to what we just got right after, but we can look out for those, and that's something I will obviously be keeping an eye on. So anyway, very cool raids, a lot to dive into. I will obviously have more thoughts when I get to play through it myself, but given my current schedule, that may be a little ways off, so we'll have to see. Until then, I will be I'm going to grind out my glaive materials for those weapons once that gets buffed. But I have been kind of just headed back to Horizon Forbidden West for a little while, because I just grinded Witch Queen so hard during opening week there that I was getting a little burned out on it. So I switched it up. But obviously I came back for the raid race to check that out, and it was a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks for watching. Go run the new mission if you haven't, or just go run the raid in contest mode if you're feeling very adventurous to do that more than once over the course of a weekend here. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.